Okay, so today I said we were going to cover sites and services and try to explain what that is. So sites and services are used in Active Directory basically to tell it how your network is laid out. So a server manager, there's a sites and services configuration option or tool that you can launch. When you first set up your forest, it goes ahead and sets up a default site, and it's assuming that all servers are in the same layer 2 network segment. But you know, networking, we operate at layer 3, so we can get out on the internet and link multiple LANs together. And that could happen here on our network here. We're through Jonesboro, so there's lots of different sites. There's a Jonesboro campus, and their campus is probably so big they got multiple subnets and stuff up there. Plus we got BB and Heber Springs, Searcy, Little Rock Air Force Base, Mountain Home, Newport. There's a whole bunch of different places. So each one's on their own little subnet, and each one has their own servers and stuff. So clients need to know the closest server to log into. That's what sites and services is for. Because Windows doesn't know how everything's connected. You have to tell it. Computers are not as smart and automatic as most people think they are. So if we look and expand out sites and services, we all see that we don't have any subnets defined. We have a default first site name, and we see all of our servers are clumped underneath that. So if you do have more than one subnet, then you need to go into sites and services and configure it. And if you're doing for a small company, which most companies I've consulted with were small, they've been in one location, you don't have to deal with sites and services, just leave the default and don't mess with it. But if they do have multiple locations, yeah, I would go in here and rename my default first site name to something more reasonable. So rename it like HQ for headquarters. It also kind of would let you know this is the main top of my forest, where all the main servers would be. Something else that's not been created yet, subnets. So I'm going to create a subnet. New subnet. You should know about subnets in Cisco. You should also know about prefix or CIDR, bit notation of the subnet mask. So if we're looking at our IP address on our servers, we're 192.168 something. Let me go look at it. I need to know that information to put the right information in that box. So we're 192.168 1.1. I want to double check your computers just to be sure you're 1. Network. And we have 255.0 subnet mask. So what would be the prefix notation? 24, because 255 is 8 bits, and you have 3 of them. So 3 times 8 is 24. So I would type in 192.168.1.0/24. Your Cisco subnetting and stuff was not just Cisco, it expands out into everything else. Cisco is networking, and about everything computer is networking. Who likes subnetting in here? It's fun. I've been hiking trips on Pettigene and arguing about subnetting and the best ways to do it. The other people on the trail were kind of like looking at us weird, but I didn't care. So we put a subnet in, and we select a site that it goes to. Now sometimes a site may have multiple subnets associated with it. There we go. I'll hit OK. And so we have a subnet and associated with HQ. Now, we would need to create another site if we had another physical location, or if we were going through a router and the two routers were connected through a slower WAN link. So I'm going to say that we have headquarters, and I'm going to create a new site. So I'll right-click the Sites folder and click on New Site. And I'm going to name it Remote 1. It also creates a default site link name here. It would be the connection between the two. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that and hit OK. So now I have remote created. It has no servers because it doesn't exist. What?
Got some weird,
Yeah, no weird symbols or spaces can be in the name. And of course, we don't have any servers because the site doesn't exist. We're just creating one. You could pre-create this, so whenever you do install servers, it ought to be placed in the right area if you're going to join something later on. So I'm going to create another subnet. New subnet, and we'll just make up a subnet. We'll do 140. We'll just do 40.40.0. And we'll say that that remote site only has a subnet mask of 255.255.240. So what would the CIDR be on that one? No, 255, 240. If I said 225, I didn't mean to say that. It's 255 all the way to the last one is 240 at the end. Yes, 28/28. So we'll go ahead and put /28, and you select the site that subnet's associated with. I said we'll just pretend like we've got a remote site running on that subnet. So it'd be valid for any IP address from 0 to 15 at the ending octet there. Hit OK. Site transport. So if you know these two are actually connected through the internet or through a WAN link and they should communicate back and forth, then I can rename this and do HQ_2_ remote 1, and that gives it kind of a name. You know what this link is and what it's doing. So the purpose of all of this, when you get this all configured in an Active Directory, it will be replicated to all the servers, and your client machines and stuff will also know. So if you have somebody logging into a computer at your remote location and there's a domain controller sitting in that remote location, it'll look at the client's IP address and it'll know I need to match it with a server in the remote location to try to log into it, instead of trying to come across the internet and log into server 1 or 2. You'd have a domain controller in your remote site. So for fast logins, faster access to resources, this is how you're telling Active Directory where things are at. And you will just have to pretend like there's a server name under here. So many of y'all grew up with Mr. Rogers, and he was very very imaginative. Some of you are younger than that, so you may not have a good imagination. If you remember Mr. Rogers, and take anything and a wad of paper and it was a bird that was flying through the air, like, really? Okay, but it's great stuff.
Bob Ross. Happy mistake.
So I'm going to go to properties on the HQ site link here. And this here shows the different sites. They'll communicate between each other. There's also cost. You've studied Cisco and routing protocols, right? Or started into it a little bit. And you know that links and stuff, you can have different costs. So you can have backups. You know, here's a primary, here's a secondary. A lot of times it's speed or bandwidth and delayed or stuff like that you could view. So this is just an arbitrary number. Everything's going to be default costing 100. But if you have a big network, you can go through and look at, well, what's the connection between all the different sites. You know, here we're getting a 10 gig connection between here and Searcy, and a 1 gig connection from Little Rock Air Force Base, Heber Springs, and Latimer back to here. So there's different stuff. The 10 gig connection, we would probably have a cost like 50 or something, and then the 1 gig connections would be cost of 100, and if we had slower connections, we might put the cost at 200, just so they're different. The higher the cost, the slower the speed. That way Active Directory could also sit there and figure out, you know, what's the fastest path, and the only way to tell it the fastest path is just to tell it in here how what you paid for. What should it be? Because nothing in Windows can measure and know what speed link that you purchased across your router. It doesn't. It can't see that. You have to tell it. Replicate every, right now, 180 minutes. So any password changes, that's the default. If I change my password here and I get in my car and I drive up to Searcy, I won't be able to log in with my new password because it wouldn't have replicated to Searcy yet. It would try to log me into the main controller at Searcy and it would fail, and I had to put my old password in. It would take up to 3 hours, and I can get to Searcy before 3 hours is up. So that's one thing that may cause issues if people change something and then drive to another location quickly. Schedule. If you have slow links, maybe you've got down to like a meg link or something, DSL, and you don't want Active Directory to take up all the bandwidth. People need to do their job. So you could not replicate during business hours if you needed to. Kind of similar to the user account logon window. I don't want to do that because that's all during class time and we want replication to take place. Well, there's no server down there, so it wouldn't really matter. We're not going to put one over there. So questions on that? I'm just saying, what is your WAN connection between your headquarters and your remote site? So we're pretty lucky here with getting 10 gig connection and 1 gig connection. My goodness. That's pretty massive. Children's Hospital and UAMS are linked with 2 40 gig links and 2 10 gig links. That kind of blew me away. I was like, oh my goodness. Maybe even faster than that now. That was 2017 that they had that implemented. So yeah, that's about all on that right there, is when to replicate, and the replicating every 180 minutes. Something else we can do. Let me find it. It's been a little bit. Subnet location. Okay, so I found it. Server 1 is the global catalog. I can see that by looking here at the global catalog. So it probably has the most up-to-date information on that system versus server 2. So I probably want server 1 to send the replication information to any remote servers, and then that remote server could replicate to others. So I can go to properties here of server 1, and right here I can say server 1 is the preferred bridgehead server for the following transport, the IP transport, that site link that we did from HQ to remote. That means I could go to a remote site and specify a preferred server down there. That means those two servers would be the only two that would try to replicate. If one of them was down, the term preferred means I prefer to go to the freeway, but if the freeway's a wreck, I'm going to go 107 to Little Rock instead of 167. You know, you got your preferred route, so you can set which two servers are preferred to talk with each other. Maybe they're the newest, fastest servers, best network adapters, or have the certain flexible single master operation role services on that you want them to replicate. And then once the change is replicated to a local server, then it's replicated to other servers in the same site, normally within seconds up to 15 minutes. That 3 hours is only between sites. Servers in the same site try to replicate within a 15-minute window or even shorter time frame. Well, that is sites and services. They consider that advanced engineering to be able to do that. It doesn't seem too complicated to me. If you've done Cisco, you're probably like, well, that's not too bad. All I have to do is translate the subnet mask into bit form. That's the hardest part. Y'all seem to do that pretty well, though. So you just have to be able to visualize your network in your head, you know, when you order all these and link them together, maybe even talking with your service providers how things are linked, what throughput you should be receiving from one to the next. And you have to tell Active Directory. But you don't have to. You can make a guess and make things just randomly go to whatever server and be slow. But to really make things operate efficiently in a multi-site network, you create sites and services. Lots of companies use this to dish out stuff, and they only have one domain. You know, we have one asub.edu. We got rid of the subdomains for Heber and Cersei, and so everybody's clumped into one. It's easier to manage than trying to log into a different administrator in a different domain to manage user accounts. Computer accounts. Your computers join up almost like a user account. You have to add, we did add our Windows 10. Remember, we had to go and say connect to domain, and we had to type contoso.com, and it asked us for an administrator username and password into Contoso. We only did that once. You may not have remembered. But that adds a computer password in Active Directory. It embeds it into the computer. And anytime the computer turns on and a user wants to authenticate, it first checks to make sure that computer is allowed on the domain before the user can authenticate. So extra layer of security, where somebody can't just bring a laptop in and plug into any network and log into that domain. They can't do that because that computer is not a part of the domain. One problem with computer accounts, though, especially when you get a campus with 1,000 computers plus, you'll run into 3 or 4 times a year that you'll have a computer that will somehow the password link from the computer to Active Directory will get corrupt, either on the computer itself or in Active Directory. Somebody will try to log on and it says this computer is no longer trusted, or the computer trust relationship is broken or something like that. There'll be an error message on the screen about the computer trust relationship. So now you have to log on to the local administrator account, put the computer back in as a work group, and then restart the computer, log back in as the local administrator account again, and then you will click join a domain, type the domain name in, type the administrator password again, it'll say welcome to the domain, you'll hit OK and restart the computer again, then it comes back up, then you try to log in as a domain account and it should work. That is something that's really common to have to do. So, since that's so common to have to do, let's see what we have for client 1. We're going to have to pretend that we can't log into client 1, and let me see what we have here for client 1. I'm going to launch computer management on this Windows 10 machine. I'm going to check on the user accounts. There are no local user accounts on my Windows 10. Well, there are, they're just disabled. Some companies, like Children's Hospital, they enabled the administrator account and they put a specific password on it, this big long password, before they deployed it out to the offices and stuff. I typically don't like to enable the administrator account, although that would be a little bit faster. They have that administrator account enabled in case the domain membership gets messed up. The IT personnel knows what the local password is. They can log in locally, take it off the domain, and put it back on the domain. But I like to show you this route. This is more secure. There's no user accounts active on the Windows 10. If the network's down or somebody steals the computer, they can't really log into it. The hacker can't log into it locally from a remote location because there's no enabled accounts. I have seen here on campus where we had a chancellor that was hacked. He put a BIOS password on the computer, so before it would boot up Windows, you had to put in a BIOS password to boot Windows. He thought that was the password to protect Windows. And he had an administrator account with no password on it. So it was a local administrator account. He logged into his domain account. So he didn't really realize the administrator account was there with no password on it, and he thought the BIOS password protected him, but yeah, there's people all over the internet connected into his machine, sharing out movies and MP3 files and porn. So I had to go and unhook the network adapter. I watched the dude take over the screen first and seen all the apps and stuff that he had clicked and was configuring, and then as soon as I seen all the stuff he had, looked like he had gotten to all the things he had put on the machine, I unplugged the cable, deleted all those services, killed them out of Task Manager, set a password on the administrator account, rebooted the machine, run virus scanning and stuff on it, got it all back to normal. So I like to leave everything disabled. Do you have any enabled account on your Windows 10? Good. So I'm simply going to shut down the computer right now, and I'm going to pretend like I can't log into it. I can, but I got to pretend, like Mr. Rogers pretends. So with that shut down, I need you to look in your C drive ISOs folder. So bring up your computer's File Explorer. Karen's trying to shut down. Let's look at Joseph here. Look under your ISO folder. And we're going to look in this, see what files we have in here. Do you have Hiren's boot CD? Don't see it. I'm going to take over your computer. Maybe. If I can get the thing. My screens are different resolutions, so it's like weird. So I'm going to go to AT106-INST, and I'm going to look under Share, look under ISOs. I'm going to look for there. Okay, Hiren's boot CD right there. So it's under share ISOs, and there's a Hiren's boot CD, HB CD. You'll need to copy that to your C drive. So just follow like I'm doing up here. // AT106-INST. Go under share, go under ISOs. Copy this Hiren's boot CD, and you'll paste it into your ISO folder. You can alternatively download this at home. And search for Hiren's boot CD. There's also a there's an old version, and there's this new version here that is community supported, that has upgraded it to work with Windows 10 and better. The actual person that created it stopped putting any updates out after November 2012. So this edition here is community. The people that they love the CD so much they got all of his work and keeping it up to date. So you can download it from here if you want, if you needed that from home. There's the file to download. So we've got a copy now to our system. The next thing to do is access your virtual machine. I'm going to get off your machine, Joseph. Okay, so back to your client machine.
Okay, I didn't find the download. Where did you go?
So once you get that copied over, you can burn it to a DVD. You can also use a tool, Rufus. Not whatever band that was up there. So Rufus is currently the thumb drive creation tool that is working. I used to use a tool called Yumi, Y-U-M-I, I think. And it has become dated and not working very well. And all the other IT people that are in the field working said, Rufus, Rufus, Rufus. So I downloaded and grabbed it. And you can put Windows ISO installation CDs on the thumb drive. You can put the Hiren's boot CD. You can put Linux CDs. You can put the thumb drive in the computer, boot up, hit a F12 or whatever to F11, depending on your BIOS, until it boot off your thumb drive, and it will boot and install. That way you don't have to carry CDs around or DVDs for booting or installing. Here there looks like has a picture of trying to put Ubuntu onto a thumb drive so you can boot up a Linux distro off a thumb drive. I've had students do that. They didn't want to mess with Windows. They hated Windows so much they just carried around their OS on their thumb drive and booted up any computer they set at. So that right there has been working pretty well. You could put the Hiren's boot CD on it. You could put it on an actual DVD. That's normally what I have. I have an actual DVD I carry around. So I'm going to pretend like I'm going to put a DVD into a DVD drive. I guess I have to eject this one first. If you have something already connected, eject it, and then go under Media and Insert Disk.
Mine just says no DVD drive present.
Yours has no DVD drive present when you click Media. Okay. Does anybody else say that? Okay, you'll have to go to File Settings and add the DVD. I'm going to click Insert Disk, and I'm going to go find my Hiren's boot CD and hit Open. So to Coda, go to File Settings, click on your SCSI controller, CSI controller, click DVD drive, click Add. Click on Image File and Browse, and then click the Hiren's boot CD, and click open. And then click OK. Something else we might want to double check. We do go under File and Settings, so we can check the boot order. Hyper-V doesn't have a BIOS like other virtualization stuff, so if I click on Firmware Boot from File, I'm going to move my CD-ROM DVD to the top, so it'll boot from the DVD. Otherwise, it's going to try to boot from Windows. This is the Windows bootloader configuration file on the hard drive. So I'm going to click on the DVD drive and tell it move up to the top. Because we don't have a standard like F12, F11 like a physical computer would to select the boot order. So once your boot order is set to DVD drive, let's go ahead and start the virtual machine. We may have to hit spacebar. I don't know if I have to hit spacebar to boot. Anytime you're booting off a DVD, you always watch the screen and it may pop up some text at the top saying hit spacebar to boot from DVD or CD drive. Yep, there it is. I hit spacebar. And it only gives you about 2 seconds, so you've got to be pretty on the ball knowing it's going to do that. And this will take a little bit of time to boot up. Okay, so Hiren's boot CD is booted up. It has the ability to read NTFS partitions and stuff. It can read external drives. I've had computers that wouldn't boot anymore, and it can boot up off the Hiren's boot CD and plug in an external USB drive and copies people's pictures and documents and stuff off, because the computer would just need to be completely formatted and reset. But is able to get files off of it. There's utilities in here for you will connect to the internet. You can update virus scanning tools and that would scan the drive. So it's a really, really useful tool, and plus it's, especially if you've got it burned to a DVD, it's read-only. Viruses will never be able to infect it. If you have it on a thumb drive, they might be able to get to your thumb drive and infect over. That's why I carry around DVDs of it. So one cool thing in here, under the Start menu, we'll go to All Programs, and there's a bunch of tools in here that you can just read through. You can go to the Hiren's boot CD and watch YouTube videos and all kind of stuff on how to maybe partition recovery, data recovery, stuff like that. But I mostly use it for resetting passwords. So underneath security, there's passwords. And I always use the Lazy Soft password recovery. So we're going to launch it. We're going to reset Windows password. Okay, next. Are you doing this for your home? Sure, I'm doing it for home. It found our Windows automatically, so I just click next again. It lists all of the user accounts that it found on the local drive. It also tells me which one has administrative rights. There's only one. Is the password blank? No. But if I hit next, it's going to unlock the account and blank the password out. So password never expires, account is disabled already, something like that. And I'll reset, unlock the account. The password has been reset successfully. It blanked it out and it enabled the unlocked and enabled the account. That was pretty easy. Finish. I think that's easy.
And which tab was that password recovery thing under?
So it's under Start, All Programs, Security, Passwords. And you could do that for multiple accounts. This only works on local accounts. If somebody created a live account that's in Microsoft Azure Cloud, it wouldn't be able to reset that. But you can always reset that local administrator account and get into a computer. So we were pretending like this client 1 lost its domain connectivity and we couldn't log in with the domain account because it says we don't trust your computer anymore. And we can't log into the local computer because all the user accounts are disabled. And a lot of people just want to reinstall Windows. Don't do that. Just reset the password. And so now I'm going to restart the computer. I'm going to eject that disk. Did not hit the space bar to boot again. I just went and told it to eject the disk, so I wouldn't try to do that again. Windows will launch, and I can log in as administrator to the local machine with no password. So we got to pretend that this does not work, and I have to click other user and log in as administrator. When I typed administrator, it changed it to the local machine name, and it has no password. So when I click, it takes me straight in. Isn't that neat? Have you ever had to do that before? Anybody? No? Is that amazing stuff? Should be amazing stuff. You used to be able to rename the accessibility wizard utility, and Windows Defender prevented that. Around 1607, or at least Windows 10, Windows Defender started monitoring that for changes. But that was a hack that you could do from way back, like Windows NT 4 all the way to about 2017. That hack worked, and then all of a sudden I learned about it about 2015, and then 2017 they stopped it. Like,
What did you do to get in? You just taught administrator
Yes,
with no password.
with no password.
That's not working for me.
Yeah, it says our account's been disabled and,
Yeah. Contact us.
contact.
Okay, now that we've got into Windows, there's two ways. I still like the old control Windows key, holding it down and hitting pause break to bring up the system properties of Windows 10. And I like to change the domain through here. However, my laptop doesn't have a pause break key on it. So in that case, you can bring up File Explorer. Okay, that's, for some reason, can't find File Explorer. Where is it? Window, there it is. File Explorer. You can bring up File Explorer and you can go to Properties of this PC, and it brings up the Windows 10. You can also, well, under here I would go under Change Settings for the computer name and domain, and it'd bring up the dialog box where I could change and move it back into a workgroup. At some point in time, Microsoft may eliminate these. I don't know when. They're trying to get rid of their old way of doing stuff. and this is an old way of doing stuff. So that's one option I'd like to show you, because you'll still run into old machines out there. The other way is to use the cogwheel under the Start menu. Go under Accounts. Go under Access Worker School. Click the domain and click Disconnect. I had a computer the other day that this disconnect did not work. It did not bring this dialog box up. So I'm going to go ahead and run the disconnect. But if this dialog box does not come up, you can do the alternative properties of this PC. Click change, click workgroup, and top workgroup there. See, it's already put workgroup. That other dialog box has already moved it off a domain, moved it down to workgroup. So there's two places currently. There's also a command line that you could run PowerShell to disjoin the domain. There's different ways you can do that. I'm going to go ahead and restart after it disjoined. It put me back as a workgroup, so I'm out of Active Directory. Like I said, this is the solution to a very common problem of a domain joined computer account. Somehow the domain membership gets corrupted. You can't log in anymore. So you enable the administrator account. You remove it from the domain. You log back in and join it back to the domain. If you have trouble with these steps, you may want to bring back this video and watch it and practice this, because this is a very common, very common IT task to do. You know, 3 computers out of 1,000 every year. That's pretty common. You do this 3-4 times a year.
I have something weird on my screen. I don't know. When I click restart, this is what I got.
Probably have to hit up there at the top, and you somehow got in enhanced session mode, so hit your button at the top. Windows 10 doesn't do remote desktop, so by default it doesn't do remote desktop unless you're administrator, so it gives that error if you try to convert it. Okay, now I'm going to go back into the cogwheel. I'm going to go back under accounts. I'm trying to use Microsoft's new way of doing things, but access school or work account. Connect. And I'll have to get past all the Microsoft Live and Azure accounts to tell it only go into a domain. They change this up every single feature of Windows that they put out. How many different features do they put 2 out a year? And Windows has been out since, Windows 10's been out, since 2015? 4 years? We've got about 8 different versions of Windows 10 out there now. And each one of them has a little bit different dialog box. So I just had to sit here and wait for this bottom part to come in. Join the device to a local Active Directory domain. I don't know why they depreciated that so much. So I can type Contoso. But it's kind of bad. Every edition of Windows, that dialog box is going to be a little bit different, worded different. You got to look for that join to a local instead of trying to join to a Microsoft Live account. They're really pushing their cloud computing. They want you to have to pay for Azure networking and stuff, a monthly or yearly basis. Now that administrator account does have a password. This is the domain administrator account. that's in Active Directory. So when I type administrator and pass1234, it should say welcome to the domain. It'll ask me this, which was only valid prior to 2000. It's way past 2000, so I'll just skip it. We get to restart again. So today's video is going to be a really good video to maybe always keep on hand. There's articles online and stuff that explains how to do all of these tasks and what to do. And now if you go into Cisco room, one of the computers says, make sure it says the domain membership is messed up. Not that it can't contact the domain controller, that's different. That means DNS or something screwed up, but it says the domain membership is no, trust relationship is no longer valid or something like that. This is the process. You would know exactly how to fix it yourself. You could use hirings, enable the admin account. And
Student run an admin account on a.
well, it's a local admin account,
Yeah.
so it's only local to that machine.
Right.
Your student account, I think, has rights. As long as you can authenticate into an Active Directory, by default, you normally can join a computer. If not, you could call one of us. I have rights. But I'm pretty sure students have rights too. It's now reading group policy. It's double checking to make sure Chrome is installed. That's why it's taking a little bit of time to start up. So I'm not going to log in as administrator. I'm going to log on to administrator at contosa.com. And this makes sure that I can connect back in and the domain membership is correct. Okay, I've logged back in. I have one last administrative task to finish, and that's redisabling that local administrator account by going to computer management and going under local users and groups, users folder, and right-clicking administrator and setting. I guess I have to go to properties. An account is disabled. So, takes it back down. I normally like to leave computers in that state. I think it's the most secure. Really paranoid about security, especially when I've had an administrator account hacked before. And somebody in China was controlling the machine.
So you just clicked on the account is disabled?
Yes.
Lock.
So if I was having administrative control over a Active Directory domain network, this is how that I would have the computer set. I have all the local accounts disabled. And I'd have that Hirons boot CD probably in the lanyard around off my belt or something like that. Walk around with it. Some of those bootable thumb drive tools, I don't know if Rufus does it or not, but some of the others you could pack multiple CDs onto a single thumb drive. When you boot it up, it'd give you a menu if you wanted to install Windows 10, boot Hirons CD, boot Kali Linux, or whatever tool you had on the system. There are other tools similar to Hirons. I had some student mention one. I don't remember the name of it anymore. Hirons does everything I needed it to, so I didn't really pick up on his tool that they use out in the world.